You're watching a socially good TV. Special presentation.
I am the pastor and founder of City of Joy, and we are appreciative that Dreams Academy has selected us to host this for you. So we pray that you have a wonderful time, informative time. Also, I want you to text DREAMS to 797979. You can get the program. It'll get sent right to your phone. And I'm looking forward to what we can learn today and how we can encourage each other today. So I want to bring up the city official, Don Rice, sorry.
First of all, let's give a round of applause to the City of Joy and Pastor Smith for hosting this lovely event. As he said, my name's Don Rice. I am the Director of Human Resources for the City of Akron, and it is truly a joy to see all these lovely and strong faces here to get the message that we're going to get from our keynote speaker today. I think it's going to be very inspirational, and I think we'll all take a little bit of something from it. First of all, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of Mayor Horrigan, the City of Akron's mayor, to this lovely event. And I want to make sure, and he wanted to make sure, that the City of Akron was represented at this event so we could give our appreciation to all you beautiful school children and to the City of Joy and to our speaker. So without further ado, I'm going to get off the mic and we can continue this program. Thank you very much.
I don't know if you are familiar with the Central Park Five, and I hope that you took some time to research it, and you'll hear some wonderful remarks from Dr. Yusef Salaam. But two things I want you to take from it is wrong time, wrong place. Do you understand that? Wrong time, wrong place. And I'm going to leave that at that. And then the last thing I want to leave you with is every single day, show up like you mean it. Show up like you mean it. Show up like you intended to be where you are in every place you plan to go. So when you get to school, when you wake up in the morning, you know you're going to school, right? So show up to school like you mean it. What do you intend to get out of school? You want to learn? You want to graduate? You want to become professional? You want to be successful? It all starts with showing up every single day. So show up like you mean it. All right? Dominion Energy has agreed to so graciously support Dreams Academy, and they are here today with a check. And I think that that's incredible to allow us to continue doing the work that we're doing here today. So would you all help me by giving a round of applause to Dominion? And if we can also get a picture with the check at this point. Brandon, if you want to come down there. And as we transition, I want to allow Dominion to have a couple of different remarks. Who's speaking?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Demisho Bradford. I am a supervisor at Dominion Energy. And I brought along with me a few of my colleagues. We are on the Ohio Diversity Council. This is something that we really believe in, giving back to our community. Dominion Energy has done this for several years now, and every year we pick certain organizations to give back to. I didn't know much about Dreams Academy, so when it was brought to the table, I had to do my homework. And this is a great thing. I really appreciate Brother Brandon for all he's doing. And if I should say something to the young men, is that fine? Hey, we all were where you are now. If you want to be successful, hey, listen to these gentlemen. They're not going to steer you wrong. I was sitting in that seat when I was that age. I ain't going to say how old I am. But I was sitting in that seat when I was that age, and I would just let things go over me. But as I got older, I had to think what someone was telling me, they wasn't trying to steer me wrong. They're not going to hurt you. They're going to tell you everything you need to help you. Because I have a little girl, and she just had a little boy, so I got to raise him the same way. And I'm going to introduce my colleagues. This is the Diversity Council's co-chair, one of them, Bridget Bro. I have Chelsea Hall, Melvina Perkins, Stanton Lee, Larry Walker, and Chris Owens. And we want to give back to help our community. So we have donated a check for $550.
Thank you, Dominion. We appreciate you all. We appreciate the support today and everything that you all do for our community. Thank you.
We're going to move on because I know y'all didn't come to see or hear me, and I know y'all want to hear Dr. Salaam. So I'm going to read these couple bios because we have a great artist that's coming in front of him, and then we're going to move on. Is that all right? All right. Orlando Watson. Cleveland, Ohio native Orlando Watson graduated from Youngstown State University in 2014 with a Bachelor of Arts in Communication and Creative Writing. Since then, he's established himself as a preeminent lyricist whose soulful baritone voice is known to weave through words with uncanny rhythmic delivery. In 2015, Watson was awarded the prestigious Kente Cloth by the Office of Diversity and Inclusion at Ohio State University alongside Dr. Mark Lamont Hill. In 2017, debut project titled Everything's Personal peaked at number 18 on iTunes R&B Soul charts, which led him to open for Layla Hathaway and Shantae Cann's respective tours in 2018. Most notably, Watson's voice can be heard on Unfinished Song by Latin Grammy Award winner Linda Briceño, I think, Braxton Cook's No Doubt LP, Damian Sneed's title track We Shall Overcome, and Schizophrenia by Bobby Sparks II of Snarky Puppy. His way with words has led him to co-write national productions such as Dominic Farinacci's Modern Warrior Live, Catskill Jazz Factory's The Spirit of Harlem, and Terrence Blanchard's Our Voices, Democracy Revisited Suite, which was live streamed on NPR's Jazz Night in America, hosted by Christian McBride. Watson's poetry has been published in Linden Avenue Literary Journal and 5 to 1 magazine, and he currently serves as the Associate Director for the Tri-C Jazz Fest in Cleveland, Ohio. Orlando's passion for faith, family, community, and culture are always reflected in his art as he sees himself as a bridge between social barriers built to further divide human mankind. Let's give a great round of applause for Mr. Orlando Watson.
I'm just glad to be here. Huge fan of Ava DuVernay's work and the Exonerated Five story. I wasn't around when it happened. In '89, I believe it was. I wasn't born until 1991. I'm 28 years old. And so when the production came out and I watched it, it was mind-opening and mind-blowing to say the least. Has anyone else besides myself seen the film? The series? Okay, cool. We're on the same page then. So when Brandon called me about 2.5, 3 months ago and told me what he was looking to do, I was all in. Ironically enough, I recorded the piece that I'm going to do for you all around the same time that I saw the film. So that's the only backstory I'll provide for you. And I won't be before you long, about 4 or 5 minutes. And this particular poem is titled Strangest Fruit. Uprooted, replanted, and plucked for profit. It's proven that we are by far the strangest fruit in this field. We're fizz, the farming tool used to damage the goods produced by my fruitful population. So we tend to inherit the habit to never look cops in the face forward, head down, disguise yourself as dead. At least they can't kill you twice, right? I've come to this particular conclusion from consuming news surrounding countless black lives, immortalized with Instagram captions on what seems to be a weekly basis, but I've seen black flesh flooded with shells along the shoreline of our lineage, like blackness is a beach where crooked cops love to camp out. I've even watched war commence on colored kids who wither like acres of daffodils, anchored in bodies of bloody water where the deceased are greeted with a deep indifference. I've even witnessed temperamental white teens being tamed with tasers, but black babies with empty hands oftentimes pacified with gunfire. I've even seen people pull their phones from pockets and purses like pistols to shoot indisputable proof. But see, Facebook footage is never a footprint for indictment here. The reality is that hands up or not, gunshots turn our torsos into hashtags. Therefore, we format tribute tweets in an attempt to retract that trauma, but that trick is never a treatment for our trail of tears. Especially when our flesh is known to float on cement against our consent as if we ain't already considered 3/5 a chip off the old block, way too black to blot or bleach. See, we preach on platforms digital. Repost are pivotal to ensure that the violent visuals are visible. See how sick this political climate is critical from transatlantic missions made miserable. Meanwhile, we witness dozens of broken bodies on breaking news, swing from a nightly noose of headlines. Headlocked by journalists who dared stock our stories with repetitious privilege, preventing us from ever forgetting just how well our black limbs make peace with the pavement, which proves that we drip pain by the pint and paint with palettes of pathological poverty. From memory, from trauma, from trying to fit into this sweet home Alabama. Georgia is still very much so on my mind. Mississippi has 4 eyes and is somehow still blind to all of the strange fruit falling from Louisiana's skies. And I'm supposed to act as if everything is peachy keen after apple seeds of deep-seated racism have mutilated my family tree for centuries on end. Thank you.
Wow. It was definitely an honor to hear that young man. Man, oh man. Can't wait to see some video footage so I can replay it a few times again. That's how powerful that was. It's definitely an honor to be standing here in front of you today. Had things not worked out the way that God planned it, I wouldn't be here. Spiritually, mentally, and physically. See, I was 15 years old when the spike wheels of justice decided to mow me and my family down. And the worst part about it, as I began to become known to the world, I became a pariah. I came home 7 years after. And I remember being in my closet and I was trying on all of the clothes that I had longed for. I had my triple fat goose with the fur on the collar. Some of y'all folks, the younger folks probably like, triple fat goose with the fur on the collar? What are you talking about? Is that like a marmot or something like that? But man, I could still fit it. And my sister caught me trying it on. I was checking myself out in the mirror and she looked at me and she said, oh, nah, get rid of that. Styles have changed. Don't do it. And I came across some mail. Many of these letters were letters that I had sent to my mom. And then there was a box wrapped that I had not been able to identify. And I opened it and started reading it. And then realized the horror once again. One of the letters was not only addressed to me, but also addressed to my mom. And this letter specifically says, this is the actual letter, by the way. I just have it in one of those Xerox pieces of protective coating so it doesn't get messed up. But this letter says, the Lord will punish Yusef for what he did to that poor, defenseless woman. And you will also be punished for raising such an animal. He does not deserve to live, and neither do you. My mother never showed me these letters, and she always showed up with a smile on her face, whether it was to the courthouse or to the prison after I got there. In my mind, I would replay this whole scenario and try to figure out whether there was something that I could have done differently that would have made this tragedy just a nightmare that I had woken up from. But I remember going to the courthouse the very last time. I was now 16. I was on bail. And at that moment, they said that they had a verdict in my case. And I was still overjoyed because I felt like it couldn't get any worse than this. The truth was finally going to come out, and I was going to finally be able to put this tragedy behind me. I'm 16 years old. How many 16-year-olds is in the house? How many 15-year-olds? 14? 13? Wow. I was 16. We were about to convene. We were about to leave for the day. And then somebody came out of the courtroom and said, they got a verdict. I was talking to somebody on the phone, a friend of mine, and I said, listen, they got a verdict in our case. I'll be home soon. I'll hang out with y'all later on this evening, chop it up a bit. And when I went into the courtroom, I heard the words guilty echoed so many times that I lost count. You see, in my mind, we weren't going to just be able to go to prison, but we were going to be murdered there. Going to jail for any crime is a tragedy, but going to jail for a crime like rape is the worst crime that you can go to jail for. To be falsely accused as a rapist means that the inmates will look at you as fresh meat. You know, a lot of young people, they say to themselves, man, I'm going to go to jail, man. Jail is a badge of honor. It's actually a rite of passage. In order for me to become a man, I got to go to jail. I'm telling you, we've been lied to. We've been lied to in such a way, because I always ask young people, I love to ask young people this question, because we come from very specific types of communities, right? And so I always say, can anybody raise their hand who's decided, like physically written out a plan and said, you know what? Let me see. I think I'm gonna live up until a certain time. And you know what? I want to be dead or in jail before I reach the age of 21. Anybody ever decided to do that? No takers? The worst part about it is that was the narrative that I grew up under. And so now I know that it's gotten a lot younger. Somebody has cast this negative reality on our lives and made it acceptable that we see ourselves as being dead or in jail before we reach the age of 21. And so there I was facing sudden death. And I remember we didn't even have time to even hug our loved ones. They told us to stand, put our hands behind our backs, and they put handcuffs back on us. And then they led us to the back. Took the handcuffs off, told us to take our shoestrings out of our shoes, to take our belts off our waist, in case we decided that we didn't want to live anymore. And we cried such a painful cry. It was hard to be free one day and then now you're facing real time. And all through that process, they told us that, you know, when they come to sentence y'all, you'll be able to say something. And folks were saying, listen, man, why don't you just throw yourself on the mercy of the court? Seek the least amount of time possible. hopefully they'll be merciful towards you. But one of the most interesting things that was happening to me when I was growing up was that I was going to public school. But when I would come home, I would get a parallel education. My mother was teaching me about folks like Marcus Garvey. She was teaching me about folks like Assata Shakur, Denmark Vesey, Toussaint Louverture, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the real Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And of course, she was teaching me about one of my heroes, Malcolm X. And so that day that we walked back into the courtroom and they said, to me in particular, do you have anything to say before we sentence you? These are the words that I spoke. I called this piece, I Stand Accused. And I begin with the words of my hero, Malcolm X. I'm not going to sit here at your table and watch you eat and call myself dinner. Sitting here at your table doesn't make me dinner, just like being here in America doesn't make me an American. Let us begin. Stress is the anger that is built up inside. Rage is the anger that is no longer built. Taking on a sucker that soon you have killed. American free will doesn't mean you can kill. And take another person's life, you live your life trife. I'm a skill builder, so on skills I do build. Creator giving knowledge to this wise black man, soon to enhance my words across the land. I'm a smooth type of fellow, cool, calm, and mellow. I'm kind of laid back, but now I'm speaking so that you know. Got used and abused and even was put on the news without clues. Some gave clues, selling out like fools. Now check it. Who did what and who did who in? Put in a situation that you don't know what to do in. Some brothers go wildin', we're not down with them. Who would have thought I'd had to lock in? I stand accused. Checking the scene from how the situation was, instead of getting facts, the media made you blurred. Now the people don't know. All they see is the media. Never hear the blame because they're constantly deceiving us. The DA's wrong. This is her master plan. This case is not a case, it's just a crafted sham. Yo, instead of trying to get your name made, it's reconstructing the crime that really pays. Islam. La ilaha illallah, being supreme over Satan, but no man is Allah. Yes, I'm a science dropper on the righteous path, so how the hell could I take a rapist path? Think about that, and then think about this. All my friends, it was me they dissed, they're dismissed, because I don't really need any friends like that. Like when I really needed you, where were you at? I'm not dissing them all, but the ones that I called that went and dissed me, like I was an inch small, like a rat, a mouse, not even a man, we're only accused, like the knife's in my hand. How does it look? Me clocked, now I'm shook, but like Matlock, soon the accused gets off the hook. It's real when she remembers and says, damn, the cops did you win? I stand accused. You people stop. This racial disperse. Hey, yo, you seen that kid Benson? He's in a hearse. And so we take it to the Benson hearse fields. Whites had bulletproof vests. We had no kinds of shields. How does it look? They killed the black man being black. It's time we take a stand. In our situation, you saw our faces clear, but not mine. Not because of fear. It's because the black race was disgraced, and for the Muslim, they must have felt shame. But I'm not to blame with the words you bought. The media took our words to paper. The ones the cops distorted. I told the cops truth like this and then boom. They were smacking my man Corey Wise in the next room. Now I know why the rosters can't stand the Babylon. They never help, they just babble on. I used to think the people and the cops were cool. But who protects us from you? I stand accused. And I took my seat. The anger. The anger on the face of the judge and of the jury and of the DA and all of the people that were involved in vilifying us was so pronounced. They were so angry that I had dared to step up and say the words that I said. But for me, it was one of the most proudest moments. See, they didn't know I wanted to be a hip-hop artist since I was 12 years old. Matter of fact, I remember going to ASCAP Records. Back then, they had rap applications. So as a 12-year-old future artist, I said, man, let me get my rap application and take it home and fill it out. Got cold feet. I got cold feet. And one of the things that I learned in prison was you should never ask permission to live your life. Never. When you think about the whole idea of being born, you realize very, very in a simple way that some people say, hey man, I'm so thankful my mom didn't abort me. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you live in a good life. Man, my mom had a choice. She could have said, not you. But when our mothers and fathers got together, we were each over one of 400 million with an M. Different options. The magnificence of that is that we were born on purpose because we could have been somebody else. Somebody like God could have said, not you. And somebody else could have been coming out. But God chose us. And the crazy part about the Central Park jogger case is that I was going through this particular crime. You have a question, young man? Oh, okay. As I was going through this particular crime, and I call it a crime not because of the case itself, but because what I became aware of was that this was the criminal system of injustice. I was not the only one. I was not an anomaly. As a matter of fact, I have my good friend, my sister, Tyra Patterson, in the audience with us. She spent 23 years in prison for a crime that she did not even commit. She came home exonerated. They found out that she didn't do it, and they had all of the evidence all along. Left her in there for 23 years. That's just one example. That's a glaring example. Right here in Ohio. But then when you look at the Central Park jogger case, this case was such a tragedy because one of the things that we found out is that one person in prison for a crime that they didn't commit means that the real criminal is out there committing more crime. And so in the Central Park jogger case, the real criminal was out there committing more crime, ultimately killing his last victim. I never forget when I heard him talk about this, it was like the craziest, unimaginable story that you could ever hear. He said he went into his victim's home and he took out a knife. His victim was there with her children. She's a young, pregnant Latina woman, and she has her children there with her. She sees him, and she says, Can you give me a moment? Can I put my babies in the next room? She didn't want them to see whatever was about to happen. But I knew she probably thought she would live. His modus operandi, his MO, at that moment and at that point in his life was that he used to give his victims a choice. He used to tell his victims, your eyes or your life. And if you couldn't live with him taking your eyes, he would kill you. And at that moment, he wasn't giving his victims any choice. And so after he raped his last victim, this is months after we were in prison for a crime that we didn't commit. This young lady could have been alive today had they done their jobs. Months after, he stabs her to death after he raped her. And in her last cries of help, the tenants in the building that she was living in came out of their homes and they sat on him until the police came. She could have been alive today. The worst part about the criminal system of injustice is that as taxpayers, we pay into the system that's supposed to protect us. We pay into a system that we need to fully understand. They say no taxation without representation. But everybody who is a person of so-called color realizes that there's two forms of justice in America right now. There's two forms of justice. We actually live in a divided country. We live in a country where if you're a suspect and you're a person of color, man, you're guilty and you got to prove yourself innocent. But if you got the complexion for acceptance, as they say, they afford you every opportunity under the law. When I got to prison, I started thinking about everything that contributed to me being where I was. And the craziest part about life is that sometimes you turn on the news and the person who took out a full-page ad calling for the state to kill you is sitting in the White House. Donald Trump not only took out a full-page ad calling for the state to kill us, but really what he was doing, if you can understand how this works, he was actually whispering into the darkest enclaves of society for them to do to us what they had done to a young man named Emmett Till. They were hoping that somebody would come into our homes to drag us from our beds and hang us from trees in Central Park. As a matter of fact, this is, people who contributed to this negative reality, they're still alive. They're still walking around. They still are actually doing the same thing that they've been doing. And I'll never forget hearing the words of Dr. Maya Angelou. She said, we as a people have historical amnesia. But the reality is that we don't. The reality is that we are socialized not to know or remember what happened just yesterday. So there's another guy, right after Donald Trump did that, it was like a nod to everyone. They had published our names, our phone numbers and addresses in New York City's newspapers. So we were 14, 15, and 16-year-old children, and people could reach out and touch us at any moment in time. This other personality named Pat Buchanan, he went full lynch mob, and in the New York Post, he said that if we took the eldest one and hang him from a tree in Central Park, and we take the others, strip them naked, and horsewhip them, maybe this will make the city's park safe again. And then he suggested, he said, we need to do this by June 1st. See, this is on the heels, though, of what you call a tsunami. Within the first few weeks of this case, they were already signing, sealing, and delivering our convictions. They had written over 400 articles about us. Nobody ever came to my house. Nobody ever sat down with me and said, hey, young king, how'd you get here? Tell us about your life. They don't even address you like that, even though they know your history. But they were telling all kind of fables about the stories that came from the communities that we came from. Broad brushstroke painting everybody in the community as if we were all one and had the same experience. Forgetting to tell us the real truth, that in most of the places that we come from, if it's a project in the community, that project was put there as an experiment, and then they just sat back and watched. So what else can we throw at them? Let's put some rats in there. Matter of fact, you know what? Let's put some roaches in there. Man, let's make the people feel so bad about the conditions that they're in that they'll turn on themselves. Because Nipsey Hussle said it best, right? Nipsey Hussle, he said, when I was gangbanging, when I was going to shoot somebody, when I shot up the block, he said I was bypassed, like I would have been safe around Nipsey in his day. You know what I'm saying? Because I look like a square. I ain't look like him. He said that he bypassed everybody who did not look like him in order to find somebody on the other side who looked like him so that he could shoot them down. Somebody planted that seed in his mind, and what's so beautiful about the life of Nipsey Hussle was that he woke up. They always say you reap what you sow. Nipsey Hussle was planting seeds in his community. Instead of what they saw in his community, whether there were projects or whatever other kind of downtrodden reality, he saw beauty. He saw a future. And even though we saw him tragically die, the whole nation witnessed Nipsey Hussle pass. Those seeds that he planted in the communities that he was living in, he will never sit under the tree. He would never sit under the shade of those trees. But his children will. His children's children will. And for that, I thank the life of a Nipsey Hussle. But I think all of us should live our lives like that. All of us should live as full a life as we can. Because what they wanted for me to do was to stop living. I got to prison, and I got a college degree. And I never say that to folks to impress them. But I say that rather to impress upon us that if I could have been in prison educating myself, believing in myself, we could do anything. Because see, what they want me to do and what they wanted us to do is they wanted us to relegate our lives to what they call the 13th Amendment. And right there it says it. I mean, in clear, it's so crazy that they put things right in front of your face. Hidden in the founding documents of this country. They're telling us that if you get arrested for a crime, they can take you and turn you back into a slave. This is what it says. Oh, when you read it, you'll see what I'm saying. Just read it again. There's some not tricky words in there, but read it again, you'll see exactly what I'm saying. For the punishment of a crime, they can take you and make you a slave. But you have a choice. You always have a choice. They'll tell you you don't have a choice, but if you've seen the film When They See Us, remember in the first part, there's a scene in there where I'm sitting and I'm talking to the cops and I'm telling them, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm in there and I'm standing my ground. I'm being firm. And by the time my mother got to me and opened the door like a superhero that she is and was, I was shaking like a leaf. I was just about to fold when my mother came in there and said, "Not my son." As a matter of fact, she took me up out of there and she gave me proper instructions. She only had a few moments with me. And what she said to me was, stop talking to them. You know, a lot of times we are faced with injustice and we want to say, hold on, man, this is wrong. We got to figure out how to fight again so that we could live tomorrow. And some of it is just by closing our mouths, being wise. They say the older you are, the more smarter you are, the more intelligent you become, the less you speak, the more you listen, the more you observe. My mother said, stop talking to them. And then she said to me, I'll never forget this. She said, they need you to participate in whatever it is that they're trying to do to you. Don't participate. So when I read the 13th Amendment, even though I was in prison, I had a choice. I could either participate and become a slave, or I could rise above it. In prison, I was in physical bondage, but my mind was free. I started believing again. When I applied myself to take my GED and passed, it's like, oh, shucks. I'm not who they say I am. I'm who I say I am. And then I applied myself a little more. They had college come into the prison. I said, well, shoot, let me sign up for some college classes. Not only did I pass the college classes that I was in, but I got straight A's. I said, man, shoot, I'm smart. All right, let me try a little more. Tried a little more, and I was on the dean's list. Not once, but twice. We did so well with this incoming college curriculum that they gave us that they took college out of the prison. That's how well we did it. Now peep the science. Malcolm X said, the least educated you are, the least options you think you have. The more educated you are, the more options you have, the more you will break the revolving door of recidivism, which it means that you'll go back and forth into the prison. When I got to the adult facility, they gave me a prison number. I'll never forget this number. Because every day, at least 3 to 5 times a day, they come and they say on the gate or on the count. That means that whatever you're doing, you could be sitting down using the bathroom. Whatever you're doing, you need to get up and get on the gate for the count. You need to get up and say your name, Yusef Salaam, and give your number, 95A 1113. And then you could go back to doing whatever it was you was doing. One day I went out to the yard and one of the elders said to me, hey, young king, you know what that number means? You know the number on your jacket? I said, nah, man, they tell us to say it every day, but what does it mean? Blew my mind. He said the first part of your number, 95, meant that you came here in 1995 as an adult. I was only 21. A is either A, B, or R. If it's A, that means you came between January and June. If it's B, that means you came between July and December. If it's R, that means you left and you came back. I'm looking at all of the jackets and understanding their numbers from a different vantage point. Some of these folks was in prison for longer than I've been alive. I'm blown away by the next reality. 1113 meant that I was the 1,113th person to enter the door, and my birthday is in February. So from January 1st to February 27th, 1,112 people had gone through the door before me. And it was only February. They got a place for us. And one of the best things that I've ever had the opportunity to do is to speak in front of young people. Because they want us to believe that we're not worth nothing, but we're worth everything. As a matter of fact, you all are the future movers and shakers of tomorrow. And as elders, one of the things, it's crazy that I call myself an elder. Did I just say elder? Did I just call myself an elder? All right, well, I'm gonna just own it for now. Later, I'm still a young person. I'm still young. But as wiser people, it behooves us to build up the future for tomorrow. And so even though people are telling you you're not worth nothing, what happens if you believe that? If you believe you're not worth nothing, you then begin to produce worthlessness in your community. If you believe you're not born on purpose, you begin to move throughout your life as a mistake. When I was born into this world, one of those 1.4 million options, my mother and my father did not give me a name. They observed me. They dreamt about me. They thought about me. They talked about me. Their question that they had to answer was, who is this? Who can we tell the world this is? And on the 7th day, they called everybody to what is called a baby naming ceremony. And they told the people who I was to be known as. My mother and father gave me the name Yusef Idris Fadil Abdus Salam. Now that's a whole long sentence. As a matter of fact, when I was growing up, I would say, when people would say, hey, what's your name? I would say Yusef, and they would say Joseph. And you get mad when people mess up your name. That was a real big mess up. That wasn't even like a little bit. That was like, you just gave me a whole different name. I said, no, Yusef. And they would say Joseph. And in motivational speaking, they got this thing called NLP. Neuro-linguistic programming. That means like when you talk to somebody, you're trying to negotiate and, you begin to talk and you start shaking your head, yes. All of a sudden, the person that you're talking to starts shaking their head, yes. And then you extend your hand and they extend their hand and unbeknownst to them, they just agreed to whatever it was that you got them to agree to. So I never forget this. When I was younger, I didn't even know anything about this. But when I would say no, Yusef, and they would say Joseph, and I would find myself saying, like, I would slow it up because, sometimes you thought people may have had a speech impediment. Like certain ethnic names are a little bit harder to pronounce, right? And so I would say, no, Yusef. And they would say, Joseph. Man, I said, okay, that's close enough. I just gave up at some point. Imagine my surprise now that I was in prison. An officer walks up to me and he says to me, who are you? And I said, I'm Yusef Salaam, one of the guys that they accused of raping the Central Park jogger. But I didn't do it. And he said, I know that. Then he said to me, I've been watching you. You're not supposed to be here. Why are you here? Who are you? This question was so profound in my life that I wrote it in my book of poetry, Words of a Man, My Right to Be. This 17th poem, it says, who are you? And I simply say, searching to find who has come. A beautiful soul, a powerful one. I found out that, I never knew the meaning of my name, but my mom said, at one point I said, hey, Mom, what does my name mean? And I saw her kind of looking off, and she was looking like she was trying to figure out what kind of name to give me or meaning to give my name. And she said, I saw her look at me and, look away a bit, and she said, boy born with hair on his head. I still had a flat top back then. But in prison, I started reading everything I could get my hands on after that question was asked of me. And I remember picking up the Bible. And I read the Bible like I was searching for something. And I came across a passage in the Bible about this young man named Joseph. Man, people used to call me Joseph. Let me read a little bit about this young man. Joseph was placed in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Joseph was placed in prison for a crime he didn't commit, and the crime that he was placed in prison for that he didn't commit was rape. I was blown away. I picked up the Quran because, I come from the Quranic faith. But I read everything. And I picked up the Quran and I came to Surah Yusuf. And it was the same story in the Quran. This story was talking about this prophet that God had chosen. And instead of you looking at it from the perspective of all of this tragedy that happened to him, God was preparing him to be birthed into a new reality later on in life. I started looking at my life in a different way. They got this great philosopher out. I don't know if many of you may have heard of her before. The great philosopher, Cardi B. Got to compose myself. The great philosopher Cardi B said, fall down 9 times, get up 10. And that's true. That's so true that is a mantra that we should live our lives by. It's not a matter of if you fall, but it's a matter of when you fall. My friend and teacher Les Brown said, when you fall in life, try to land on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up. Fall down 9 times, get up 10. Keep getting up. We got comeback power. When you look at the conditions that we come out of, it's amazing when you see a LeBron James doing mathematics and trigonometry from the court. So you're not understanding the science. He's looking at it and he's measuring and he's figuring out, how can I move through this person and move through that person and look fly at the same time doing it? Matter of fact, sometimes he ain't even trying to look fly. It's just all about being a lion in the jungle. Calculations and just saying, man, I'm a dunk from half court. I mean, I don't know if he did that before, but I know I've seen LeBron James play. But when you look at life, imagine my surprise that when I readjusted my focus, I said, oh, snap. The Central Park Jogger case is actually a love story. It's actually a love story between God and his people. The Central Park Jogger case is a story of how a criminal system of injustice can be placed on trial, turned on its side, in order to produce a miracle in modern time. It's actually a story further about how a people can be brought low and buried, only to rise, because everybody knows that we are all seeds. And what's most important is, as they try to kill us by building fires to consume us, they always forget the owner of the heat. Always forget the owner of the heat. See, I was taken out of society and placed in the belly of the beast. And just like a baby being formed and stretched and altered and sometimes having to be reshaped and, sometimes broken into whatever it was that was going to happen, split in two. When you come out of that process, now you have eyes that can see. Now you have ears that can hear. Now I can tell the young future kings and queens of tomorrow to go free. Because everybody knows that in order to be a great person, you got to be tested. All I'm saying is keep your head up. Look at the test and understand that this was meant for you as a part of you being great. Because on the other side of that, imagine being afraid all of your life. And then all of a sudden, one day, you just conquer your fear. You say, you know what, man? Man, I'm going to just jump out of the plane. I was listening to Will Smith one day. He said on his 50th birthday, he said, man, one of the most exhilarating things that he found himself doing was jumping out of an airplane. He was scared to death. But on the other side of fear was the most amazing thing that he could ever experience. And what we find out through fear, these words that we give things, fear actually becomes an acronym. Because if you're afraid of something, you usually never go that way. No, I'm too afraid. I'm not going to do that. But once you do it, you realize that you've been afraid of nothing. And you can live your life in a fearless manner. Because fear is false evidence appearing real. You can look at it and tell other people to go free. And then when you find out what you're supposed to do in life, like God gave me this. God gave me this tragedy as a gift. I went to prison and it was a gift. because of what I got. And so now I can still be young enough to tell young people that you too can go free. You too can refuse to become a slave. You too can rise above any kind of circumstance that they want to keep you boxed in and live full and die empty. Never forget this. Your dreams and your hopes and aspirations, everything that you can imagine that you want to be, keep dreaming and keep trying. Keep putting one foot in front of the other to make that reality real. Because the worst place to be is at the end of your life on your deathbed. And all of those dreams, all of those hopes, all of those aspirations that came to you, imagine all of them being given life and now looking at you. Your dream is looking at you, hoping that you could give it life. Your hopes are looking at you, hoping that you could give it life. Your aspirations are looking at you, knowing that if you do not give it life, at the end of your life, they are going to go into the grave with you. Give it life.
Thank you, man.
Hey, some Grammy music.
So listen, before you all go, wasn't that a great presentation? Thank you, Dr. Salaam, for this moment in history, both for Dreams Academy, for our city as individuals. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you for watching SGTV, Socially Good Television. Visit sociallygoodtv.com and remember to share this video.